Good morning, everyone. We're so happy to see such a big audience here today. I'm Jamie Henning. I'm the president and CEO for the Greeley Area Chamber of Commerce. I had some prepared comments to start off today, but I'm actually going to use a quote from someone who was here. I was introducing myself and my role at the chamber to them, and they said, to quote an attendee here today, "Greeley's got it going on." I couldn't agree more. So I want to mention that. And that's a big team effort. I'll also say we're much more than a bedroom community. We represent over 700 investors in the region. We're one of the fastest growing MSAs, and we're incredibly proud to be part of this regional partnership. I want to take a moment, and I'll ask you to hold your applause till I'm done with all these groups I want to thank. But I want to take a moment to thank my fellow CEOs, Ann Hutchinson and Mindy McLuhan. They are incredible leaders for our region. I also want to thank Johnny Olson, who's our chair this year from Greeley. We're proud of you. We're excited to see the work that you'll do. My fellow NCLA cohort, we have several of our policy steering committee members here from Greeley today I've seen in the audience. And I want to thank our legislators. There are so many incredibly important issues we're going to cover here today, and we will be vocal and we will be engaging with you, and we're excited to do that work. I'm fortunate to sit on the board for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Board of Trustees, and then also the American Chamber of Commerce Execs. And I don't know if you know this, but I think this is a great chance to educate on the convening that Chambers of Commerce do. We represent over 7,077 organizations across the country and hundreds and thousands of millions of members. So we are a convening group, and I will tell you, I was able to attend those meetings in October in DC. And as we were talking about things, we do have shared challenges across the country, and many of them in Colorado are shared and yet unique around housing, workforce, development, and transportation. But what I can tell you is the group that NCLA has put together is unique across the country. The collaboration in the region really sets us apart and really was convened many, many years ago. So proud to do that work with our NCLA group. I can tell you in Greeley, we're also working on some long-term visioning and strategic planning. We'll be excited to launch that here at the first of the year. But I want to commend the work that's been done today because of that convening on I-25. It was talked about today, it will be continued work, but I also want to turn our eyes toward the work to do. Specifically in Greeley, I'll mention the work of our group on the Merge project, also on Highway 34. Those 33,000 commuters that are moving between the communities are incredibly important to us, and the money that we spend on those roads is going to be important. So we will be a vocal advocate and a squeaky wheel. I want to go ahead and mention our next speaker. She is a strategic partner in that work that we're going to do, and we're going to hear a presentation from her today. So it is my honor to introduce Heather Paddock with CDOT to come and tell us a little more about the work that we'll do together.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I think this is a great group, and I was told to talk about, some quick highlights about transportation in 30 minutes, and I could probably talk to you ad nauseum for 24 hours, so I'm going to do my best to highlight what I think is really important about transportation. And when I talk to an audience that I know maybe has some background in transportation or maybe knows nothing other than the fact that they use transportation every single day in their lives, I take the opportunity to educate a little bit because I think it's important that we all see the potholes. I hear the complaints all the time. I know the challenges that are out there, but I just want to give you a little history of what we're faced with and how we're trying to tackle some of those challenges. So I'm always going to start it off with how we're funded, because I think people don't realize, I look at transportation like a utility, similar to running water. We live in America, we get clean water. We turn on a tap, we expect it to run. It's the same thing with transportation. It's something we expect will work when we walk out of our, house or whatever whether we're walking, whether we're biking, whether we're getting in a car, whether we're getting on transit, we expect it to work. But how does it actually get paid for? Because you don't pay a transportation bill, so to speak. My sewer bill, $25 a month, they're going to raise it $5 next year. That's a 20% increase. They're a utility, I'm going to pay it. We don't do that with transportation, and I want you to think that into perspective as I talk about it. So these are some old slides, but I think it's important to note that our primary source of revenue for transportation is the gas tax. The gas tax in the state of Colorado hasn't been raised since 1991. So let's just put that into perspective of what challenges we face in transportation. We pay the same gas tax today, whether or not that gallon of gas was $1.14, or we're filling up at $3.56 or $4.25 or whatever it is, we're still paying the same 42 cents on the gallon for our transportation. And that's the Highway User Trust Fund, and that can only go towards roadway improvements. So we're challenged a little bit as there's some big initiatives, specifically with the current administration and the Biden administration, to really push on equity and environment. There's a real strong desire to sort of uptick the, transit. Well, transit doesn't have a really strong source of funding, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to set the sort of baseline for you guys. This is just a good map of the United States. It just sort of shows, how Colorado has sort of lagged. We're a unique demography, right? I mean, looking back at voters in Colorado, we were a very rural community. We were a very red state, right? And then we were a little purple. Now we're pretty blue. Yet we still vote when it comes to taxes like we're a very red state. So we still haven't been able to successfully raise a gas tax, even though it's been tried. Over the last 30 years, it just hasn't happened. So our legislation, thank you very much, this last few years has tried to take some stabs at how can we put a dent and get some money into the transportation sector. And this just shows why it is challenging for us. How many people we have and how we're kind of growing. What people used to pay at the pump actually made a pretty big difference on the road. But as we've got a growing population and cars are getting more fuel efficient, we're even bringing on EVs. And yes, EVs are paying their share, so don't say that they aren't. But the dollar isn't going as far. We're all faced with inflation challenges, and I can tell you our budget doesn't go up 20% a year. We're lucky to see about a 1.8% increase in fuel tax every single year. We know what inflation sits at, and we know the cost of labor and everything. It's not cutting it anymore. This just shows some I know it's hard to see in the back, but basically the top line just shows the population increase here in Colorado. The bottom gray line shows how many lane miles we have added. We have not added a lot of lane miles. We own 23,000 lane miles in the state of Colorado. Okay, we've added about 100 over the last 20 years. So it is not wildly significant when we talk about capacity increasing. I know there's a lot of noise around that, but to offset the amount of population that's coming in and the vehicle miles traveled, right? And that is why we're looking at other modes. We're saying, how can we accomplish, right, the growth? I know the demographer said growth is slowing in Colorado, but we didn't keep up with the growth that happened 20 years ago. We're just playing catch up. So we need to look at it holistically in transportation. Yes, capacity doesn't solve all of our problems, but neither does transit. So it's got to be an approach that works for everything. And we need the right mode and on the right road. And I don't think mixing pedestrians with freight is smart, right? We've got to be smarter about how we're doing our transportation planning. We can't fit everything into the same box. And so that's where the partnership with all of you and the cities and the municipalities and land use really play in. I hear you on State Highway 14. We're currently doing a study and we're working on that. That is one of our top priority corridors here in northern Colorado. The challenge is we've got growth on that corridor, right? So communities they're annexing, development's coming in, that's great. More cars are coming on the road, that's good. And CDOT's saying, oh my gosh, how do I find the money to keep up with you, right? And that's why we've leaned so in. And I love northern Colorado because I've never experienced a community like Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance that honestly pull together and say, hey, we see you, CDOT. This isn't just your problem, this is our problem. And how can we work together to solve it? Because I can tell you, I-25 would have never gotten done had it not been for the individuals in this room. It just wouldn't have happened. And it was their advocacy that made it happen. And when it comes to State Highway 14, and it comes to 392, and US 34, and 287, and I-25, those are our big corridors here in northern Colorado. It's the partnership with the communities and the land use, right? When we say, hey, we need you to build us a turn lane or an acceleration lane or a deceleration lane to improve safety, that's our partnership. We need you guys to participate because your new housing development is bringing in all of that traffic. Your new Costco is going to put a demand on our system that we don't have the funds to support, but we want to work with you to find the right solutions. So I'm not trying to push it. I'm not saying it's your problem to solve. It's our problem to solve. And just, to tag on to the demographers and the growth, yes, we might be declining, but I can tell you northern Colorado is not declining. So the blue bars on the bottom are the regions. To give you a perspective for CDOT, if you could break the state into 4 quadrants, I'm the northeast quadrant, which is region 4, so all of you guys. That is that 4th bar. Region 1, you basically take a nice circle right out of the center, call it Denver Metro, and then those are the other regions. So we see the biggest growth, right? We've got, in my opinion, we're facing those challenges, and we're actually at a prime time, and because of this group here, to actually solve the problems of today and for the future, to try to get ahead of the growth that's going to continue to come to northern Colorado. This is a busy slide. It's really just to show you where does all of our funding come from. And as I mentioned, we get money from the feds and money from the state through the highway tax fund. That's that 42 cents. Half of it goes to the federal, state, and then it's redistributed back to us. Half of it we keep. There's a couple other things, and this is why I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about, because we've been so unsuccessful in passing taxes, this legislation has looked at fees, smaller incremental ways to say, how can we give transportation some money? One way that has been very successful is our Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise. So when you guys go and register your vehicle, you have multiple fees on that registration card. One is for faster safety. It's a fund to improve safety on our routes. And the other one is the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise. On top of our 23,000 lane miles, we have over 5,000 bridges. And 20 years ago, we were 47th in the state, 48th in the state as far as the quality of our bridges. We now sit around in the nation, we now sit around 25th because of that additional investment in our Bridge and Tunnel program. And then we have some other state funds that come in from aviation, and then our legislative initiatives. We very rarely get general fund dollars. Now that comes and goes, but it is not consistent funding. And so we will talk to the legislature a lot of times, but as it was mentioned today, we got budget cuts. And so what's getting pulled? Our general fund. So now we're gonna have to figure out what gets impacted and how do we close those gaps? Because we've got a proposal out there to help close that $1 billion gap. And then we're going to be looking at cutting around $100 million out of our around $2 billion budget. And then this just sort of shows where those dollars actually go. And so we've got about $600 million that goes to maintenance and operations, our real-time ops. Every time a car breaks down on I-25, we got people out there to help rescue that car. Every time we need to do a lane closure, right? That's my forces out there along with CSP helping keep the lanes safe. That costs money. And every snowstorm, we spend $100 million annually keeping those roads open so everybody can get to where they need to go. That doesn't improve potholes. That just keeps mobility moving on our system. So although so many of us are wanting those potholes fixed, me too, it's a challenge. And I did some simple math. 23,000 lane miles, the old rule of thumb was about $1 million for a new lane mile. It's now about $2 million, right? So that's $46 billion annually if we wanted to touch every lane mile. Well, that's not realistic, but at $1.5 million to $2 million, we can only touch a road every 30 years. So that is the challenge that we are faced with. And that's, I will say, I work for CDOT, I will say we do really good job of trying to spread the peanut butter out, but I can tell you we're not making everybody happy. And I hear all of you guys, I hear it on 52, I know it. I know where these challenges are. The other thing that our budget, our $2 billion budget, the reason why I said 1.5 is that about $450 million of that is pass-through. So we do have part of our budget that actually goes to locals and to counties. I talked about a little bit, we have what I consider a base program. Is we have our regular CDOT assets. So we have 12 different asset classes. We have projected models, so we do inspections, right? We want to make sure those bridges are safe for you guys. So every bridge gets inspected every 2 years, and it gets a rating. All of our facilities, we have over 230 facilities because we have patrol barns sprinkled throughout the state. Our facilities sit at like a level of service D on average. We have failing facilities, but it's really hard in the public eye to say, we're going to replace a patrol barn and not get the potholes fixed. So where do we put the money? We put it in the potholes. But we put about $764 million annually into our asset program. But based on our projected models, I'm not sure. We're short $350 million. Right off the bat, by all of our projections, we are short that. And yes, some of our capital projects could go to that, but I can tell you, us not touching I-25, us not working on bus dang expansion, us not doing that safety project, that roundabout project, that signal project that's needed for a growing state, we can't just put all the money right back into potholes, right? We have to keep up with the demand of the population and the growth. I mean, transportation is what connects us all. It was what drives the economy. If we're in gridlock, you guys, people don't want to move here. They're not going to make investments in this state of Colorado. Part of one's quality of life, in my opinion, part of the reason why I moved to northern Colorado is because I don't want to sit for an hour in congestion in Denver. I want to be able to have a 15-minute commute, and that's what I have. So I just hitting on a couple other things because I really do want to save time for any questions. Short of, as I mentioned, our main source of revenue is the gas tax, plus we've got a few legislative fees that they've recently added, which is helpful, and the occasional general funds. The only other way CDOT can bring in revenue is through CTIO, which is our Colorado Transportation Investment Office, which is through our toll lanes. And I know some people have very mixed opinions about toll lanes, but the idea behind that is not only, one of the huge drivers and benefits of express lanes is that it creates a reliable trip. So if you are headed to Denver or you are headed to the airport and you need to be there on time, that express lane, you're willing to pay a premium. I'll pay the $10 or the $4 or whatever that rate is based on the congestion. The expectation is you can get there on that travel time. But the other thing is the express lanes they do generate revenue and they can pay for themselves. So I-25, the big win up here, right, that's recently been completed, and the last section we're not done yet, we still have segment 4, but segment 5, the current section that's under construction, that is a frustrating segment under construction, and I can tell you we've taken a lot of proactive measures to make it more safe. But all of that, most of that is being paid for through future toll revenue. So we had to take out a really large loan. It would not have been possible. All right, it's a $1.2 billion investment. Over half of that is being paid by a TIFIA loan that is going to be paid off, just like you mortgage your house over 30 years, that loan is going to be paid off over the next 30 years. I-25 wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the express lane. We wouldn't be investing. So there is a plan. There is a express lane network, as many of you know. There's some up on I-70, 470 down in the gap near Castle Rock and Colorado Springs. That's the reason. You really won't see a lot of capacity expansion happening out of the state of Colorado unless it is in the form of an express lane. I'm going to skip on Front Range Passenger Rail only because I saw that you guys have, I think, somebody talking on that. But I will just say that that's been a big focus of the current administration is to really make some investments in another mode, right? It can't just be on the I-25 corridor. What other mode? How can we move people? The challenge is the dollars, because you're talking about a whole nother set of infrastructure, right, that you have to support. And as I mentioned, the HUTF cannot go to passenger rail. So where do those dollars come from? I'm sure passenger rail folks will talk a little bit about that. So I just want to hit on a couple of the big wins lately. Not only did we expand 20 miles here in northern Colorado from Berthoud up to Fort Collins with that express lane. I hope many of you are enjoying your recent commutes on there. And I hope you're enjoying the free tolls. I think come this spring, we will be lighting up those signs and we will start collecting toll revenue. It does take about 6 months for us to basically do all the toll testing and integration, and that's why it is free. I still strongly encourage you to not cross the double white line, because as soon as we go live, we will be having automated cameras, and you will get a $75 ticket for every time you cross that white line, and you have 20 days to pay it, and if you don't pay it, it goes to $150. And if you don't pay it, you think you're going to get away with it when you go to register your vehicle, and we have somebody that I think drives a Lexus. They're going to owe $24,000 when they go to register because they are a frequent flyer in and out of our express lanes in Denver. So that's going to be a really fun bill for them to pay, but they've got a pretty fancy car, so I'm guessing they feel they can afford it. It's pretty funny. I've got some pretty funny stats of the frequent flyers in and out of our express lanes. I will say the reason why we implemented that was the safety, and we have seen a dramatic drop in the safety and accidents that happen in that section in Denver, in Thornton. That was the big area that we saw so many accidents, and we have vastly, I didn't say we didn't fix the safety issue, but we have vastly improved the safety issue since we added that ticketing system. But the mobility hubs are a big thing. We added 3 mobility hubs on I-25. This shows the ribbon cutting at Centerra, Loveland Station. We have another one at Berthoud, and we have another one at Firestone. If you guys haven't taken Bustang, I encourage you to do so. You can catch it here for free through the next month. January 1st, we'll start charging for tickets, but right now, if you want to check out the new center loading mobility hubs, with the added mobility hubs on the I-25 corridor, we took off about 10 to 12 minutes on that Bustang commute. So that's a big deal, because when it comes to transit, if you want people, there's some people that rely on transit, there's other people that can make a choice. I'm one of those people. I could choose to take transit, but I can tell you if it's not reliable and it's not equal or as fast as my driving my car, I'm probably not going to choose to take transit. Bustang now, you're in the express lane, it is just as fast, even with the stops, as driving your personal vehicle. So if you haven't tried it and check out the times, I highly encourage you to do it. So just to hit on a couple other big priorities, as it was already mentioned, the MERGE project here in Greeley. This is a big priority for Northern Colorado, big priority for CDOT, and a big priority for the city of Greeley. We've put a lot of energy into I-25, this community out here, and our next big growth area that's going to need attention is 34. That is our major east-west corridor in Northern Colorado, and Greeley has been very successful, and they were just recently a recipient of a RAISE grant from the Biden administration, and so this is going to be getting kicked off very, very soon as far as the construction. And they also included in 34s not just new interchanges to improve safety and the operations, but it's also a mobility hub to accommodate. Like I said, it's working these modes in conjunction with each other, and so it will have a transit component. The other thing I wanted to hit on too is 287. We also did recently receive a nice award from the Biden administration for 287 to address our safety needs. This is a section up in Larimer County, so basically from Ted's Place to the Wyoming border. We recently, about a year ago or so, we had a pretty horrible fatal incident that took the lives of 3 swimming athletes. And that was really, we've known it's been an issue, but that really was the impetus to say we've got to figure out how can we put together a package. And we are very happy that we were successful on round one in receiving $55 million in a grant from US DOT to address this. But we did the grant together, but we'll be putting about $55 million in Larimer County and then another $23 million in Boulder. As many of you know, our probably worst section of 287 as far as crashes go is the stretch between just north of Longmont and just south of Longmont. That is that sort of 5-lane section. It's got a lot of access, and a lot of those left turn movements end in pretty serious accidents. But what we see a lot is people crossing over, whether it's ice, snow, a medical condition. You'd be surprised how many people have a medical condition when they're driving their vehicle. And they cross that center line, and because that's a high-speed facility, those head-on collisions are pretty ugly and typically pretty devastating. So we'll be putting a center barrier down the middle of that stretch with some limited access to really improve the safety of that corridor. Those were and then this is the 287. We're also going to be addressing wildlife. Everyone's like, hey, the wildlife. Yes. There's a lot of wildlife up there, but I can tell you wildlife is not what causes serious injuries or death for our drivers. It typically does for the animal, but it is the lack of good access at those intersections where we don't have like a left turn pocket or a right turn decel lane. So those are the types of improvements that we're going to be doing, as well as passing lanes on that 287 corridor. So I know I talked really fast, but I really wanted to have an opportunity to engage with you guys and ask any questions as it relates to transportation. I'm happy to take where that pothole is that you're really struggling with. Yeah.
So so in transportation, we see the new plan from the governor, 2025 transportation plan. And with the budget cuts, I'm hearing a rumor that there's going to be about $60 million cut out of safety. Could you maybe expand on how the plan and the $60 million cut on safety, how that is going to intertwine?
So I think we are still figuring that out. I know that there is a potential proposal that was pushed out at JBC yesterday. To maybe try to offset that. So yes, you're correct, off the cuff. Our faster safety program is about $83 million, and we're going to be cutting 60 of that. Those dollars go specifically to safety projects. So we have what's called a 10-year plan. We are in the process of updating that 10-year plan. What I anticipate is a lot of those maybe priorities from various communities, they may get shifted, and what may become a higher priority are some of those necessary safety projects. That's where I see us probably making up the difference. It's not a great story, but it's the reality in which we're living in. What other questions? I am not aware of a study that's being done. I can tell you that is always top of mind for me and my team. That's the funny thing about transportation, is because these projects are so significant, right? Look at I-25, a $1.2 billion project, and our budget is about $1.5 billion. So we're not going to spend one whole year's worth of budget on a project. So these projects, when I think of what does sustainability look like in transportation, it means we need to set goals, and people need to agree on solutions that can sustain any political environment. Because when we work on these projects, the study on I-25 started in 2000, okay? We delivered it starting in 2018 through now, through 2028, right? So it's a 30-year 30 years, how many changes in governors have we had over the last 30 years, right? So what it takes is everybody staying focused on the target. And what the one thing that the I-25 corridor did is we never wavered from the solution. Every community bought in and said, this is what we want, this is the fix. One of the other things to improve process is regulation. I did hear some legislators talk about that. That was music to my ears. I don't want to dive into any of the specific ones that hold us up, but that is I will say, although I'm appreciative of the new fees that are coming, they come in proportionately small increments. Now, I'm not going to say 20 million is small, or I'm not going to say 50 million is small, but when we talk about a transportation project, that's maybe one project. We have hundreds of projects that need to be done across the state. You add a new fee, you add a new board, you add a new rule that says it can only be spent on these types of investment. It creates a level of bureaucracy that makes it harder to deliver that project. So those are the challenges. So I don't want to stand up here and say I'm complaining because someone's giving us money, but I would much rather see the money get put into the programs that we already have, because we've already established a lot of those good rules and those best practices to be delivering those projects.
All right, let's wrap it up.